On a distant world, towers burn and the sky is red with smoke. Flames climb like hungry animals, and the ground shakes under the weight of marching machines. The air smells of metal and ash, and every breath stings. Children hide under broken stairs while their parents whisper for them to stay quiet. Soldiers run through narrow streets with cracked helmets and tired eyes. They fire at the dark shapes that move like shadows between ruined buildings, but their shots bounce off heavy armor. The city, once bright with songs and lights, now groans like a wounded beast. Windows burst, roofs fall, and sirens cry without rest. In the central hall, the alien council gathers around a table that shakes with every distant blast. Their faces are pale under the cold blue light. One holds a cloth to a cut on his forehead. Another grips a small charm of her family and refuses to let go. They argue in harsh whispers, not because they hate each other, but because fear squeezes their voices. The enemy has broken the outer ring. The enemy has cut power to the eastern district. The enemy has taken the factories near the river. Words fall like stones, every report heavier than the last. A young officer rushes in with a cracked tablet. The outer gate is gone. There is only smoke where the gate used to be. The council leader looks at the ceiling as if answers might be written there. Then back at the others. Their people are brave, their fighters are strong. But bravery is not armor, and strength is not a shield against endless metal. They must decide now. They must do something that their pride never allowed before. They must ask the stars for help. The idea hangs in the air like a final card turned over on a table. Some shake their heads. They say the galaxy will not listen. They say the powerful empires fear the enemy too. They say that if anyone hears, they will demand a price too high. But the leader points to a live feed on the wall. The feed shows a hospital burned black. A mother screaming for a child under a beam she cannot lift. The room goes silent. Pride is not worth a child's life. They move to the communications tower that stands above the council hall like a broken tooth. Stairs are cracked. Smoke leaks through vents. A team of technicians work under flickering lights. Cables snake across the floor like tired snakes. The chief technician wipes oil from his hands and nods. The long-range array may still work, it is old, but it can still throw a voice across the dark. If the enemy does not cut power, if the tower does not take a direct hit, if the dish can still turn without jamming. So many IFS. Yet if is all they have, the council types a message with shaking hands. The words are simple because simple words travel farther than flowery ones. They say, we are under attack, our cities fall, our people bleed, we ask for help, we have little to trade. We have only our thanks and a promise to stand with you when our feet are strong again. We will not forget any hand that lifts us today. The message is not proud, it is honest, and honesty feels like a small fire against the cold. The chief technician connects the tower to a power line that hums like a waking animal. He flips 3 old switches. Lights blink one by one. A circle of screens grows bright. The dish above the tower begins to turn slowly, scraping iron on iron. The message forms inside a core of spinning crystals, each crystal humming a different tone. Together they make a song of need. The song is packed into a lance of radio and light, and with a firm command the lance is shot into the sky. It cuts through smoke and cloud. It pierces the high thin air that never tastes fire, and then it leaps into the cold where sound is only math, where distance is like an ocean that never ends. The message flies past dead satellites that no one claimed, past broken stations that drift like bones, past the quiet ghosts of old wars. It flies through the lanes where merchants used to laugh and count coins, now empty. It slides along gravity's rails, bouncing off relay stones that still remember their work. Every time it hits a stone it shouts again, help us, help us, help us. On the ground the council waits. The chief technician lowers his hands and listens. The tower continues to hum. The enemy guns do not stop, the sky still shakes. But in the hearts of the people a tiny room opens. A room where hope can sit for a moment and warm its hands. Hours pass like years. The first reply is only static. The second is a cold voice from a distant empire. The voice says they regret. They must protect their borders. They advise surrender to save lives. The council stares at the floor. Someone whispers a curse. The third reply is an automated apology from a trade guild. The fourth is a recording from a collapsed state that cannot help anyone. More messages arrive, each one a door that opens to a wall. The soldiers keep fighting street by street. A medic ties a tourniquet. With a strip of her own jacket, a pilot guides a wounded transport low over the river where ash falls like snow. The council leader drinks bitter water and wishes it were stronger. Someone suggests changing the message, offering minerals, offering land, offering old secrets. But what can be offered that the powerful do not already hold? They change nothing. They keep the message honest, because the truth is the only coin they still own. In a small apartment near the tower, an old teacher tells scared children a story about the first time their ancestors lit a fire, how darkness did not end, but it moved back one step. In another building, a young engineer patches a generator with wire cut from a broken lamp. He whispers to the machine, "Live a little longer, just a little." In the ruined market, a baker who lost his oven hands out the last sweet cakes he saved for his daughter. He says he wants the children to taste sugar even if the world tastes like smoke. The message flies on. It reaches systems where rulers sit on thrones built from fear. They hear the call and look away. It reaches free stations that are brave but small. They hear the call and cry because they cannot lift that much weight. It reaches pirates who grin and delete it. It reaches wanderers who promise to pray though prayer does not stop shells. It reaches, finally, a place where the map is thin and the stars seem rough to the touch. A place most travelers avoid. A place marked by old warnings. There the message knocks on a door that is always half open. Instruments that watch the dark blink and show a spike. Operators who do not scare easily lean forward. Their screens show the burning world. Their headphones play the soft voice of a people who chose truth over pride. Inside a command room without windows, figures stand around a table of light. They do not wear fine robes or soft shoes. Their uniforms are scarred. Their hands carry the story of many hard days. They read the call. They do not laugh. They do not look away. They know the name the galaxy has given them. They know the old word spoken with fear and respect. They have been called many things, but the word that hangs in the quiet room is Deathworlders. The room does not fill with loud speeches. There is only the sound of a pen clicking, the sound of a file opening, the sound of engines waking far below the floor. The people in the room study heat maps, weapon signatures, orbital paths, the enemy's formation, the terrain where civilians hide. They measure the call not as a chance for glory but as a duty that feels heavy and right. They remember their own history when their skies burned and no one came. They remember who they chose to become. After that, outside the command room, hangars stretch like dark mouths. Inside them sleep ships shaped by harsh logic, hulls thick, spines strong, jump cores that hum like storms. Crews begin to run down metal stairs. Helmets click shut, gloves seal. A quiet energy flows through the place, not wild, not careless, but the steady charge of people who know what to do. In the distant city, the council does not know any of this yet. They only know the enemy has pushed into another block and their last armored car is stuck under falling stone. The leader returns to the tower and touches the base of the transmitter as if greeting an old friend. The chief technician nods. The dish still turns. The hum still holds. The message still flies. Outside, over broken rooftops, dawn crawls up like a tired soldier. The light shows the true shape of the damage. It also shows the faces of those still standing. These faces are dirty and streaked with tears, but they are still here. The leader thinks of a child who asked last night if the stars sleep. The leader said no, the stars do not sleep. They watch, they listen. Somewhere in the black void a reply forms. It is not a long speech. It is not a promise of easy victory. It is a simple line on an old frequency that the tower almost forgot how to hear. The line says, "Message received. Hold." The council stares at the speaker. No one breathes. The chief technician checks the signal twice, 3 times. It is real. Not a trick of static. Not a ghost of earlier noise. It is real, and it carries a weight like a hand placed gently on a shaking shoulder. The leader closes tired eyes for a moment and opens them again. There is no cheering yet. The city still burns. The enemy still advances. But the room where hope sat small now grows a little larger. The reply repeats, "Message received. Hold." And in the deep dark beyond the edge of common maps, engines flare like new stars. A fleet begins to move. And though the people on the burning world do not know the shape of those ships, though they do not know the faces behind those helmets, though they have heard many cruel stories and many fearful names, they feel the air change, as if the world took one long breath and decided to keep breathing. The SOS, born from shaking hands and honest words, does not die in silence. It finds ears more dangerous than any invader, and those ears have decided to listen. The city burned through the night, and when the second day came, the smoke was so thick that even the sun seemed afraid to shine. Streets once filled with markets and laughter were now covered in black ash. The air tasted of iron and dust. Every corner carried the echo of falling stone or the distant boom of enemy weapons. The survivors moved like shadows through ruins, clutching what little they had. Soldiers with cracked armor leaned against walls, drinking water that tasted of rust. Children were carried on tired backs, their small faces pressed into cloaks to hide the view of flames. The alien council gathered again in the hall, their eyes red from no sleep. Some wanted to believe the short reply they had heard. Message received, hold. But doubt pressed hard on their hearts. One counselor shouted that it could be a trick from the enemy. Another said no one in the galaxy would risk their fleets for a broken world like theirs. The leader raised a hand and silence fell. They repeated the words slowly, message received, hold. Those words had weight. They were not just noise. Someone had heard them, someone had answered. But who? The galaxy was wide, the empires were proud, and none wanted to stand against this invading force. The council's thoughts swirled like smoke. If help came, it would not be soon enough, and yet if no help came, the city would not last another week. In the broken streets, soldiers fought on, pushing back when they could, hiding when they must. A young pilot guided a half-broken fighter above the rooftops, dodging enemy fire with wings that sparked and bent. His voice cracked over comms as he told ground troops to hold for just a little longer. In the hospital, a medic tied cloth strips as bandages when no supplies were left. She whispered to wounded fighters, promising them that someone, somewhere, was coming, even if she did not fully believe it herself. In the homes that still stood, families huddled together, whispering prayers to stars they could no longer see through the thick smoke. The city was breaking, but the spirit of the people bent without snapping. Far beyond their skies the message carried, bouncing from relay to relay, ignored by many, deleted by some, laughed at by others. Yet in one shadowed corner of space the Deathworlder fleet prepared. Their ships sat heavy and silent in dark hangars, armor thick as mountain stone, weapons humming like quiet storms waiting to be unleashed. Officers studied the burning world's message again and again, mapping enemy lines, counting orbital cannons, studying weak points. Their faces were cold but their eyes sharp. They knew this was not just about saving one world. This was about proving again what Deathworlders were. They remembered their own history of wars, of hunger, of fire that tried to erase them. They remembered no one had come to save them then. They had saved themselves, and now they had the power to answer cries the galaxy dared not touch. Back on the ruined world the people grew restless. Some whispered that no help was coming. Some wanted to surrender before all was lost. But others clenched their fists, refusing to bow to invaders. The leader of the council walked through the broken streets without guards, speaking to survivors, telling them to hold, to trust the words they had heard. Message received, hold. Those words spread like a quiet fire, repeated in whispers, then in louder voices. Soldiers scratched the words into walls with broken knives. Children whispered them before sleep. The words became a thread of hope holding the city together. The enemy noticed the stubborn fire in the people and pressed harder. Their machines pushed deeper. Their ships circled closer. They wanted to break not just the city but the spirit inside it. Yet as the invaders advanced, new signals stirred in the sky, faint at first, almost hidden. Radar screens blinked with strange readings. Soldiers thought it was static. Engineers thought it was broken sensors. But then one pilot, flying high over the smoke, looked up and gasped. She saw faint glimmers against the stars, shapes too massive to be falling debris, too fast to be drifting wreckage. She whispered into her comm, "There is something up there." The ground troops froze, listening. The council turned toward the tower. The leader's heart beat hard in his chest. The words returned again like a promise carried by the wind. Message received, hold, and above them, moving with the patience of hunters, shadows stretched. Across the stars, the first sign that Deathworlders were on their way. The night stretched long, and the city beneath the choking clouds felt like it was holding its breath. The invaders pressed harder. Their engines roared through ruined streets. Their machines broke down walls as if they were made of sand. Their weapons carved fire into stone. Yet even as the enemy grew bolder, whispers spread in the dark corners of the shattered world. Whispers of what the pilot had seen high above the smoke. Whispers of shapes moving in the stars. Whispers that someone had heard their call. Those whispers kept people awake, not with fear, but with a fragile hope that sat in their hearts like a candle shielded by cupped hands. The council gathered again in the cracked hall, dust falling from the ceiling with every distant strike. They stared at maps that showed more red than green. The enemy controlled most of the outer districts, only the center of the city stood firm. But even that would not last. The leader pointed to the skies, reminding everyone of the faint signals and the strange shapes. Some counselors argued it was nothing more than debris. Others feared it was new enemy reinforcements. But the leader shook his head. His voice calm though his eyes were tired. He said the words again. Message received, hold, someone had answered, and if someone answered, they were not forgotten. Far across the galaxy the Deathworlder fleet stirred. Massive ships left their docks one by one, their hulls gleaming with scars from old wars. They were not painted in gold like the fleets of proud empires. They carried no banners, no symbols of glory. Their presence alone was enough. They moved with quiet power, engines burning blue fire into the void. Inside the command ship officers studied the burning world, its maps projected in light across the room. Every enemy formation marked, every weak point circled. The humans did not rush. They planned with cold precision. They knew this was not just about crushing an enemy. This was about answering a call that no one else dared to hear. The commander, a figure with steel in his voice, spoke only one line: prepare the fleet. The words rippled through corridors like thunder rolling through a canyon. Soldiers strapped on armor. Pilots climbed into cockpits. Mechanics checked engines. Medics readied their stations. The entire fleet moved, as if it shared one heartbeat, a heartbeat that grew stronger with every passing moment. Back on the ground the enemy sent out a broadcast, their voice deep and sharp, demanding surrender, promising mercy if the people laid down their weapons, promising death if they did not. The broadcast echoed across the city's broken streets, but instead of crushing spirit, it sparked defiance. A soldier carved words into the wall of a ruined school. The same words that had become their thread of hope. Message received, hold. Children whispered it back. Old men repeated it under their breath. Even the wounded in the hospital said it through clenched teeth. The invaders did not understand. They thought fear could break everything. But they did not know what it meant to believe in something unseen, to believe in help still coming. They did not know what it meant to trust a voice in the dark. High above, the Deathworlder fleet moved closer, their ships cutting through the black like predators in silence, their signals carefully masked, their weapons armed but cold. They did not announce themselves to the galaxy. They did not boast. They only advanced with the patience of hunters. The burning world's message had reached them, and they would answer. Already their scouts slipped ahead, invisible shapes darting past the enemy's outer patrols, gathering data, marking targets, feeding every weakness back to the fleet. The humans worked with ruthless calm. They had not even revealed themselves, yet the trap was already being set. The galaxy might ignore a cry for help, but Deathworlders did not ignore those who called in desperation. Because they remembered their own past when no one came for them, and they had sworn they would never become like the empires that turned away. The people on the ground still did not know who had heard their SOS, but every hour they survived felt different now. Before they fought to delay death, now they fought to hold until help arrived, even if that help was still only a whisper in the stars. The invaders tightened their grip. Their machines circled closer, their commanders confident that no one would challenge them. But above the smoke, hidden in the black, the Deathworlder fleet drew near, shadows of warships growing larger against the void, engines humming like the breath of giants, and though the people below could not yet see them, they could feel something change in the air, the silence before the storm, the promise that the galaxy's most dangerous children were finally coming. The enemy pressed deeper into the wounded city. Their heavy machines rolled across cracked streets, crushing stone and memory alike. Their banners of fire painted fear in the air. Their weapons tore through walls where families once lived. And still the defenders fought on, step by step, block by block, knowing each stand might be their last. The night sky glowed with the red of falling towers, smoke so thick it turned dawn into shadow, and in that shadow, despair crept like a cold hand. Many whispered that no fleet would come, that their SOS had been swallowed by silence. But the words of the strange message still held on. Message received, hold. The council leader repeated them to every soldier he passed, to every child hiding in broken shelters, and though their eyes carried doubt, their hearts clung to the sound of those words. The invaders moved with ruthless confidence. Their commanders believed resistance was only delay. They sent out fresh demands for surrender. They promised survival if the people bent their knees, but promised fire if they refused. Still, the city did not bend, for hope, even when small, can be harder to kill than stone. Soldiers fought from rooftops with rifles that overheated after every burst. Engineers turned wrecked vehicles into barricades, and medics carried the wounded through alleys lit by burning light. The people were not fighting to win. They were fighting to survive long enough for the stars to answer. Far beyond, in the cold silence of deep space, the Deathworlder fleet had already made its choice. Their ships gathered like storms waiting to break, enormous vessels whose hulls were scarred from countless battles. Weapons systems charged and ready. Scouts returned with data from the burning world, showing every enemy position, every stronghold, every orbital cannon. The commanders studied the maps with sharp eyes, their voices calm, their orders simple. The fleet did not boast, it prepared. And when Deathworlders prepared, it meant the storm was close. They moved not with the arrogance of empires, but with the cold weight of duty. They had heard the call, and now they would answer. On the ground, the defenders felt the city slipping away. The outer lines were gone. The enemy pushed into the heart of the city. Fires rose from the council hall itself. Walls cracked under bombardment. But still the leaders refused to leave. They stood among their people, repeating the same words, hold, just hold, and in the streets, the words grew louder, painted on walls, whispered between fighters, sung like a chant in the shelters, message received, hold. It was not just hope anymore. It was defiance. It was a promise that they would not fall quietly. The invaders did not understand why the people still resisted. They could not see what the survivors felt in their bones, that the silence in the stars was not silence at all, that something vast and dangerous was moving, something that had heard them when no one else dared to listen, and in the smoke-choked skies, the first distant tremor began. Faint signals too steady to be mistakes. Radar screens blinked with warnings, commanders barked orders. Unsure what approached, pilots reported shapes. Too large to be debris, too controlled to be chance, and though the enemy laughed at first, their laughter did not last, because above the broken world, shadows stretched long and wide, bigger than any fleet they had ever faced, and for the first time, it was the invaders who began to fear the dark. The city was now a skeleton of what it had once been. Towers that reached the clouds were nothing more than broken spines, the rivers ran black with ash, and the streets were choked with smoke that carried the bitter taste of loss. The invaders marched through the ruins like owners, their metal feet crushing everything in their path. Their war machines roared without mercy, and yet even in the heart of ruin, the people clung to a single fragile truth. Someone out there had heard them. The words of the message echoed still. Message received, hold, and those words kept them standing when their bodies wanted to fall. The invaders could not understand why the defenders still resisted. Their commanders expected surrender. They expected the city to kneel as every other world had. But this city, broken as it was, refused. Soldiers with cracked weapons still fired from rubble. Their shots weak but they were unbroken. Engineers strung wires across alleys to trip machines that weighed more than houses. Even children carried stones to block paths. Every corner of the city bled defiance. The invaders grew. Frustrated, they unleashed heavier weapons, burning entire districts to the ground. But the more they destroyed, the stronger the whispers became. Message received, hold, painted on walls in ash, carved into broken doors, muttered through bleeding lips. The words spread like fire the invaders could not put out. Far beyond their burning skies, the Deathworlder fleet moved closer, enormous warships sliding out of the black like predators. Their hulls scarred but unbroken, their engines humming like storms. Every detail of the enemy's lines had been mapped, every weapon marked, every weakness noted, and the commanders gave no speeches. They only gave orders, simple, direct, final. For Deathworlders did not march for glory. They marched because someone had cried out, and no one else had answered. Their duty was not a choice, it was who they were. Crews strapped into their stations. Pilots whispered to their ships like old friends. Soldiers sharpened blades and checked rifles. Medics prepared for the wounded. The entire fleet breathed as one, patient, steady, waiting for the order to strike. On the ground, the people of the ruined city felt a shift they could not explain. In the middle of smoke and fire, the air seemed to change. The silence before a storm that had not yet broken. Radar screens in hidden bunkers picked up faint movements in the sky. Strange signals danced across old receivers. At first the defenders thought it was another trick, another wave of invaders. But then a pilot flying low over the rooftops saw the stars flicker. Not from fire, but from shadows moving. Where no shadows should be, she whispered into her comm that the sky itself was stirring. And though her words carried no proof, they spread through the city like lightning. The invaders noticed too. Their commanders barked orders, scanning the heavens with fear they would not admit. Their machines raised their weapons to the skies as if they knew something was there. But nothing revealed itself, only silence, only the burning world, only the endless void, yet their unease grew. Because silence can be louder than war when it hides a hunter. The people of the city clung harder to their hope, their fists clenched, their voices stronger. Message received. Hold. They whispered it again, and above them, unseen by their eyes but heavy in their hearts, the Deathworlder fleet watched, waiting for the moment to show itself, waiting to prove that the call had not been in vain, and that the galaxy's most feared children had come to answer. The city groaned under the weight of war. Each hour another wall fell, each day another district vanished into smoke. Yet the defenders still clung to the ruins like roots refusing to be pulled from the soil. Their bodies were weak but their eyes burned with something the invaders could not crush. Hope was thin, fragile, but it lived, because of the words that had reached them. Message received. Hold. The council repeated them again and again. The soldiers carved them into broken armor. Mothers whispered them to their children at night, and even the wounded, lying in dark corners with shallow breath, mouthed the words as if they were a prayer. Still the enemy pressed closer, their machines now crawling over the very heart of the city, their banners rising high as if victory was already written. But their commanders grew restless. Their scans showed something strange in the skies, faint signals flickering at the edge of their instruments. Too steady to be storms, too large to be debris. The enemy told themselves it was nothing, yet their voices betrayed doubt. On the rooftops the defenders saw it first, faint glimmers cutting through the smoke, shapes moving slow and deliberate. The sky seemed to shift though no sound followed. A young soldier pointed with shaking hands, whispering that the stars themselves were moving. The news spread quickly, and though no one could say for certain what it was, the people felt a pulse in their hearts, something unseen but real, as if the very air was telling them to endure a little longer. The invaders mocked at first. They told their troops it was imagination. They ordered their machines to fire harder. But when radar screens lit again with warnings, when scouts reported shadows too vast to measure, unease spread through their ranks. Far above, the Deathworlder fleet had arrived in full, massive ships drifting like silent mountains, their armor black against the stars, their weapons glowing faintly, engines humming with restrained power. They did not announce themselves. They did not speak across the void. They simply watched, studying every enemy line, every cannon, every ship, waiting for the signal. In the command ship the officers stood silent around glowing maps, their commander's voice low but firm as orders flowed. Target lists confirmed, strike patterns laid, evacuation corridors prepared for civilians. This was not chaos. It was precision, the kind only Deathworlders carried into battle. Each ship prepared like a blade waiting to be unsheathed. On the ground, the council gathered on the roof of the cracked hall. They looked up into the smoke-filled sky. They could see nothing clearly, only faint lights that might have been stars or might have been something more. Yet their hearts told them the truth. Someone was there, someone who had heard their call. One counselor whispered in awe, "They came." And though the others said nothing, tears shone in their tired eyes. For the first time since the invasion began, they believed survival was possible. Across the city the whispers grew louder, not just words of hope now, but cries of defiance. Voices raised into the smoke, message received, hold, shouted from rooftops, painted across broken walls, carried in voices that refused to break. The invaders prepared their weapons, their ships circling in the upper atmosphere. Their commanders shouted that no one could stand against them, no one dared challenge their power. But deep inside their own ranks, unease spread like cracks in glass. Their scans told them something enormous was waiting beyond sight, something vast and silence is the most dangerous sound in war. Above the world, the Deathworlder fleet shifted formation, a storm ready to break. And though the people on the ground could not yet see it, they felt it in their bones, the moment before thunder, the breath the world takes before the strike. The city had nearly reached its breaking point. Flames painted the skyline red and black. The air was thick with dust and the bitter smell of burning stone. The invaders marched without pause, their banners flying high, their machines tearing through the last defenses with the weight of inevitability. Yet in the hearts of the defenders a fire still burned, not from strength alone but from the promise that someone was out there, someone had heard them, and as dawn pushed through the smoke, that promise began to reveal itself, Radar stations buried deep beneath the ruins screamed with signals too massive to be false. The enemy dismissed them at first, calling them errors, shadows, tricks of failing instruments. But soon even their commanders could not deny it. The skies above the broken world were shifting. The defenders saw it too, eyes turned upward through cracks in the smoke. Faint silhouettes moved across the heavens, vast shapes blurring stars, too large to be debris, too slow to be meteors. Voices whispered in awe, not meteors, not storms, but ships. The survivors clutched one another. Some wept openly, others clenched their fists, all knowing the truth without speaking it. The words carried through the streets like a wind. They came, they came. The invaders felt it as well. Unease rippled through their ranks. Their machines turned their guns skyward. Their pilots adjusted their paths nervously. But nothing descended yet. The sky held its silence like a hunter waiting in tall grass. Above the burning world, the Deathworlder fleet unveiled itself at last, titanic warships sliding out of shadow. Their hulls blackened and scarred from countless wars, weapons glowing with quiet power, engines burning with restrained fury. They did not announce their names. They did not carry flags. They carried only presence, the kind that bent silence itself. Across open channels a single voice echoed, steady, firm, undeniable. We heard your call. The words spread like fire across every frequency. Defenders froze in shock, their hearts racing. Invaders stiffened in sudden dread, and the council fell to their knees, tears streaming as they repeated the words aloud. We heard your call. The invaders scrambled, panic spreading behind their sharp orders. Their fleets repositioned above the world. Their ground troops raised shields, but fear had already seeped into their bones. For every empire knew the name Deathworlders, whispered in warnings, spoken with both fear and respect. The galaxy avoided their wrath because once unleashed it could not be stopped. Now that wrath stood above the burning world, silent but ready. In the command ship of the fleet the order was simple. Weapons live, targets confirmed, civilians marked safe, and across thousands of consoles hands moved in unison. Soldiers steadied rifles. Pilots gripped controls. Engineers braced against humming engines. Medics tightened gloves. The fleet was a storm about to fall. On the ground, the defenders felt the shift. It was no longer only about survival. It was the moment before salvation. Cheers broke through the choking air. Voices rose from broken streets. The words that had kept them alive now roared with new strength. Message received, hold. No longer a whisper but a shout, painted across walls, cried out from rooftops, carried like thunder rolling through ruins. The invaders heard it too. And though they screamed orders for silence, though they unleashed fire on every corner, the voices only grew louder. For above them the sky itself had changed, no longer theirs to command, no longer empty. The Deathworlder fleet had arrived, and with their arrival came a promise written in steel and fire, that the burning world would not fall alone. The first strike came without warning. The sky split open with fire, and the world below shook as if the heavens themselves had awakened in rage. The Deathworlder fleet unleashed its opening blow. Beams of light cut across the void with surgical precision. Enemy ships that had circled the burning world only moments ago now broke apart like fragile glass. Their hulls shattered, their engines ripped from within. Explosions bloomed across the upper atmosphere, and for the first time since the invasion began, it was not the defenders who trembled, it was the invaders. On the ground the people lifted their heads. Through smoke and ash they saw streaks of light raining down from above. Not the cruel fire of their enemy but the fire of deliverance. Cheers erupted in streets that had known only screams. Soldiers who had been pressed against barricades lifted their weapons higher. Their voices roared as they shouted in disbelief. They came, they truly came. Even children hiding in broken shelters looked upward and smiled for the first time in weeks. Their small voices repeating the words that had carried them through the darkness. Message received, hold, and now those words were no longer just hope, they were reality. The invaders reeled in shock, their commanders barked orders, their machines fired blindly into the sky, but Deathworlders did not strike blindly. Every blast was measured, every shot precise. Enemy warships that tried to regroup were cut down before their formations were complete. Orbital cannons on the ground that had once rained death on the city were silenced in seconds, their barrels melted by pinpoint strikes. Enemy transports fell burning from the sky, scattering their troops into chaos. The invaders had never faced an opponent like this, an opponent who did not hesitate, who did not fear, who did not pause to boast. The Deathworlders moved like a storm with purpose. Inside the ruined city, the ground shook with each impact. Windows shattered, rubble fell. But instead of despair, the people felt strength in the tremors. Every explosion above was another enemy falling. Every flash in the sky was another proof that their cries had been answered. Soldiers on the ground used the chaos to push forward, retaking streets they had thought lost, striking back against invaders whose lines were broken by fear. Medics carried the wounded with renewed strength, knowing that survival was no longer just a dream, and the council stood together on the roof of their cracked hall, eyes wet as they watched the sky, whispering in awe, Deathworlders. Above the world the battle raged. Deathworlder ships moved like predators through a herd, their weapons tearing holes in enemy lines, their shields holding strong against desperate counterattacks. Enemy commanders screamed across channels for reinforcements, but their reinforcements never came, for the galaxy that had ignored the SOS would not risk their fleets now. They would not stand against Deathworlders. They only watched in silence as the feared children of a harsh world carved fire into the void. The invaders realized too late what had come for them, and their fear spread faster than their commands. The people on the ground no longer whispered, they shouted, their voices carried through the ruins louder than the invader machines. Their chant rose above the smoke, message received, hold, message received, hold, and in that moment it was no longer just a message, it was a victory cry. For above them the Deathworlder fleet rained fire and fury, and the invaders who once thought themselves unstoppable now scattered like insects under a hammer. The tide had turned, and everyone, friend and foe alike, knew the battle for the burning world would never be the same again.